Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, the sanctimoniously notorious. I've had lots of crazy drama in my own life today. A lot of wackiness happening, so I had to postpone this chat for an hour. But I got Gilbert here. Gilbert is chomping at the bit for some delightful cookie action, aren't you? And so is Tallulah. So okay, I'm going to feed them both. I don't know. You can't really see Tallulah. But here's Gilbert. Here he comes. There's Gilbert gets a cookie, and Tallulah gets a cookie, and Gilbert gets another cookie, and Tallulah gets a cookie. See, that's détente, General. Oh, it's okay, guys. That's it. I'm out of cookies. I'm out of organic cookies. Here, you can have another one because you're a girl and you deserve more. So anyway, there you go. There's the daily dog explosion. They actually, I think they know when I'm going online now, and they wait and make cookies a part of their day. So welcome all of you imagination connoisseurs to this, the Post-Geek Singularity community. It's a great Friday, everybody. I think it's great to have you here. Remember, these chats are brought to you by Lucky Tiger Men's Grooming Products. For those men who want to look good and feel great, you can go to their website, as you all know, and punch in PGS when you go to getluckytiger.com and punch in PGS when you check out for Post-Geek Singularity Community. You get 20% off your order. And that's kind of what Hans Gruber said when he was going to rip off the Nakatomi Corporation. He hoped to steal those bearer bonds and be sitting on a beach collecting 20%. So you can be just like Hans Gruber. You can look good, feel great, and you can wear suits from John Phillips in London. Anyway, I don't know what that has to do with anything, but I guess it does. Anyway, you know, I've been getting some great letters, still getting some great letters. And the idea of the 3-word movie review that our moderator, Terry, so grateful. Actually, no, Paul in Long Beach floated. But Terry, our moderator, sent in a list of 3-word movie reviews we will be posting on the Burnettwork website. And man, they are funny. That Terry, British humor when he was growing up certainly rubbed off on him. Although, or something else rubbed off on him. I don't know. But Terry, you're a funny, funny man. So thank you for that. Now, I got another letter. We also posted this letter. It is on the Burnettwork website, which you can go see and read now. But I thought it was really interesting, and it was the second letter that I got. I guess the third letter, because he thought I didn't read his first letter. But I guess it's the third letter from Mr. Chris Wrigglesworth. Now, how can you not like the last name Wrigglesworth? Maybe that's not his even real last name, but I want to believe it is, because I would love growing up with the last name Wrigglesworth. It's an onomatopoeia. It kind of sounds like it is. Wrigglesworth just sounds like something fun that you would do, like at an amusement park. You have to go through the Wrigglesworth machine. But anyway, Chris sent a letter that I really, it's something I think about a lot. So I thought I would float it out to you guys and see what you think, and we'll discuss it. It's not something that has, here, let me just start. Let me just read what Chris says. Dear Rob, here's the first letter I sent. I'm technologically challenged, so I probably did something wrong, but here's my second attempt. So I will understand if you don't want to read it on air. Take care, Chris. I post as 80s_73 on YouTube. Well, no, Chris, I would have read this. Maybe it just, I don't know, passed me by, but I have to say that I like this letter. Dear Mr. Burnett, please allow me to start by pulling a quote from one of my all-time favorite movies. I'm hoping that this letter finds you and finds you well. I've watched you since the days of Sci-Fi Vortex, My, How I Miss the War Room, and then Collider Heroes. So I am glad that you're still putting out such great content. I truly feel that you have brought together a wonderful community in the Post-Geek Singularity and want to thank you for all the time, hard work, and care you and the moderators give to it. Now on to the reason that I write you today. Just prior to the awesome excitement that has been brought to us by Avengers Endgame, Game of Thrones, and Season 2 of Cobra Kai, you were having some very good letters, thoughts, and discussions, many with John Campea, regarding censorship in movies, specifically the Dumbo animated movie and Song of the South. If I remember correctly, John leans towards censorship and repression. I totally agreed with you that these movies should be allowed access by the general public as originally produced. I've heard the criticisms and accusations of racism, etc., leveled at them, and while I personally don't agree with those conclusions, they are valid opinions and reactions, though I feel misguided. I believe this is because many who are saying such things haven't actually seen these movies, especially Song of the South, as it has never seen an official home video release from Disney domestically. I owned the Song of the South Laserdisc from Japan, but I sold it for a lot of money. I saw it during its 1980 theatrical re-release, and after that, I didn't think too much of it until years later I learned that Disney refused to release the movie on home video in the United States. I was intrigued, and as an adult, desperately wanted to see what was so horrible about this movie when I couldn't remember anything terrible about it. I finally was able to track down a copy of the Japanese Laserdisc and view it again. I was going to do an in-depth personal analysis of this movie. However, it became quite large, so I had to abandon that idea and will just offer my reaction instead. Hey, man, finish it. We'll put it on the Burnettwork. Perhaps I'll complete the full review and offer it in sometime in the future, should anyone ever care to hear it. Yes, please review it, and I will put it on the Burnettwork. In conclusion, Song of the South, at its heart, is the story of a kind old man who befriends and tells stories to a lonely little boy. It attempts to show that in spite of age, socioeconomic, racial, and cultural differences, people are people. It's clearly set during the post-Civil War Reconstruction era. The three children, Johnny, Toby, and Ginny, benefit from childhood innocence, which allows them to look beyond physical differences and past atrocities and befriend each other. Johnny's grandmother, Miss Doshi, and Uncle Remus have the wisdom of age and can also look past such things, as they clearly had a long-standing friendship and respect for each other. I don't think this is one of Disney's best movies, or even my favorite, but it is still good. More than that, it has special meaning to me. Song of the South is the first movie that my mom ever saw. When she grew up, seeing a movie in a theater was a rare treat, and this just happened to be the one playing when she went the first time. Needless to say, when it got its 1980 theatrical release, she took me to share the experience of her first movie with me. I could go into many reasons why I feel that Disney not giving an official release is a poor decision, but the fact that I can't add a Blu-ray to the collection or stream it on Disney Plus to share it with my children is the biggest. Yet shouldn't the fact that positivity be found in the film be a factor? Playing devil's advocate, let's say I had found Song of the South to be every horrible and vile thing I've ever read about it. I still don't think it should remain repressed, because we do ourselves a disservice if we ignore what was wrong in our past and don't gain wisdom and understanding from it. I would see it as a teaching moment, an example of how far we as a society have come and how far we have yet to go. Finally, I find it to be uplifting and inclusive instead. I thank you for reading my letter. If you are so inclined, do feel free to share it on your show, as it would be nice to know if anyone else had a positive experience from it. Chris Wrigglesworth. Well, this is, I've talked about this before, and it's an issue that I think that we are having we're having a really interesting, we're going through an interesting period in our history, and it's one that is very schizophrenic to me. Many times I have said that we are living in a time in human history where there's more inclusion and there's more representation than ever before. Does it need to be better? Yes, it does. But we're living in a time, especially in this country, where with identity politics and my side of the aisle, the left, progressive left, has become, I think, deranged, to be honest. And we can't even discuss things anymore. Difficult issues that need to be examined from all sides. Instead, it's all or nothing, or people get pilloried for pissing off one person. And there is, I think, at our core as people, we if we take being human beings as a baseline, I think ultimately most people want the same thing. You want to lead a fulfilling, productive life. You want to be treated like an individual. I'm a staunch believer in individual rights. You want to be respected for who and what you are. You don't want, say, prejudices against your race, your religion, your gender, your sexuality, whatever it is that is you. You want to be free to lead the life, the best life you can lead, unfettered by the constraints of people telling you what you should and shouldn't be like. Somebody always come to the door when and Elizabeth's mother and Elizabeth's mother's sister is here from France. Elizabeth's mom and her sister are French, and Elizabeth's half French. Please, Gilbert, the French have arrived. The French are here, just kind of like they helped us in the Revolutionary War. They've just arrived here on the home front. So the French are here. But Gilbert's 25 or 75% poodle, so French poodle. So he's probably pretty excited that actual French people are here in the house. But we want to lead our lives the way we can, and we want the freedom to be who and what we are, unfettered by the constraints that are put upon us by governments, by individuals that are telling us what to do, like Tony Montana, what to do, what to say, what to think. You ever been a communist, man? That's really terrible, Tony Montana, but I was trying. So I find it very interesting that we see all kinds of weirdness on college campuses, and young people are very quick to be, and older people, middle-aged people with one foot in their graves like myself, are so quick to be pointing the fingers and screaming. Their intentions are good, but as they say, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And when we see the very foundations of our society, like the freedom of speech, being disrespected on our college campuses, which are supposed to be the one place where you can have intellectual explorations of all ideas without, people protesting speech. These are interesting questions. Now, when it comes to Song of the South, as many of you may or may not know, Song of the South, especially if you're younger, it's a Disney film. It's a live action Disney film. And I didn't call this up. Actually, I did. And I Song of the South, I did not. Let me just read from the Wikipedia entry because it's quick. Song of the South is a 1946 American, so 1946, right after World War II, an American live action animated musical produced by Walt Disney and released by RKO Radio Pictures. It is based on the collection of Uncle Remus stories as adapted by Joel Chandler Harris and stars James Baskett as Uncle Remus. The film takes place in the southern United States during the Reconstruction era, a period of American history shortly after the end of the American Civil War, and the abolition of slavery. The story follows 7-year-old Johnny, who is visiting his grandmother's plantation for an extended stay. Johnny befriends Uncle Remus, one of the workers on the plantation, and takes joy in hearing his tales about the adventures of Brer Rabbit, Brer Fox, and Brer Brer. Johnny learns from the stories how to cope with the challenges he is experiencing while living on the plantation. The song Zippity Doo Dah, Zippity Doo Dah, Zippity Day, my oh my, what a wonderful day, which is from Song of the South, won the 1947 award for Best Original Song. The 1947 Academy Award. So Song of the South is an Academy Award winning movie for Best Original Song, and Baskett received an honorary Academy Award, a black actor, for his performance as Uncle Remus. Since its original release, Song of the South has remained a subject of controversy. Some critics have described the film's portrayal of African Americans as racist and offensive, maintaining that the black vernacular and other qualities are stereotypes. In addition, the plantation setting is sometimes criticized as idyllic and glorified. Because of this controversy, Disney has yet to release Song of the South on any home video format in the United States. Some of the musical and animated sequences have been released through other means, and the full film has seen home video distribution in other countries around the world. The cartoon characters from the film have continued to feature in a variety of books, comics, and other media. The Disney theme park, Splash Mountain, which you can go ride today, is based on the film. This is very interesting to me. I probably saw Song of the South as a little kid 4 or 5 times because I loved it. And one of the when I started buying laser discs, A Song of the South was available on Laserdisc in Japan, and in the early 80s, things were not easy to obtain from the Disney catalog. They hadn't released a lot of stuff yet. They would get around to it, but Song of the South, not released on home entertainment, home video here in the United States. So the question is this movie racist? Is the portrayal of African Americans or Black Americans in this movie a racist portrayal? Or is it a product of its time? Now, I, as a child, loved this movie. And, as a kid, I would sing Zippity Doo Dah, Zippity Day. My, oh my, what a wonderful day. Plenty of sunshine heading my way. Zippity Doo Dah, Zippity Day. I mean, it's so funny. Now I'm hearing all of the lyrics of the song. No wonder it won the Academy Award. It is definitely an earworm that will stay with you. But the real question is this movie something that should never be seen again? When I worked for Curdy Pellerin, which was, I worked there from 2000 through 2004. And I worked on many Disney titles. Curdy Pellerin was exclusively producing what we called VAM, value added material. They started out doing it for Laserdiscs, the box set on Laserdiscs. Then they moved over to DVD, and then I guess they stopped, but they didn't get to Blu-ray. But then we worked on DVD, and we worked on a lot of special features. Now, I've told this story before, but I worked on the first time Snow White was released on DVD. I produced a thing called Disney Through the Decades, along with Jeff Curdy and Michael. And I worked on movies like The Emperor's New Groove. And I contributed. The biggest thing I contributed was I created a feature-length documentary I directed and edited on the making of Tron that came out for that film's 20th anniversary in 2002, which they ported over later to the Blu-ray. So when I was there, we talked a lot about, and somebody accused me of being a racist the last time I brought this up. When we were at Curdy Pellerin, one of the things we wanted to release was Song of the South, because there were many of us as Disney fans who wanted to see it released. And we heard all the reasons that they thought it was problematic and it had been deemed racist and things like that. And we were like, yeah, but anyone who knew anything about Song of the South is that many Black audiences were very fond of that movie. And like me, as a white audience member, I grew up with it. And it was our thought that we could probably get famous Black celebrities to contextualize the film for us and maybe offer a framework by which we could then present the film. Or maybe they would have told us to get stuffed and not want to do something like that, but that was not the impression that we were given. And I think that as far as where Disney is right now, I think Disney's cultural history of where they were, how they started, how they maintained and endured, and what happened, they've had many ups and downs. And in the early 80s, they were sort of a moribund company. They couldn't get distribution of their films the way major studios were able to get distribution. In the summer of 1982, when Tron came out, they weren't able to get as many theaters as, say, the theaters that were showing Star Trek II and E.T. and Poltergeist and the movies that were hits of the summer of 82. So, and that affected Tron's box office as well. So Disney, and also their animation was moribund. I mean, they'd released Black Cauldron. They hadn't been doing well as a company. And to see even where they came from the early 80s to today, when Disney was when Ron Miller was running it, as opposed to where we are now with Bob Iger and Alan Horn, there's a fascinating story of American business in Disney. And of course, during the 40s, Warner Brothers made way more offensively racist and propaganda cartoons during World War II, I think, than anything that's in Song of the South. Now, I haven't seen the film in probably 20 years, but the question remains, do we pretend Song of the South never existed? I think, in my mind, the answer to that should be no. Now, a company that has a rich legacy like Disney should be known. I mean, the film was, again, it was re-released in 1980. So for almost 40 years of American history, that movie existed and people watched it and they grew up with it. And it was part of the cultural lexicon. I mean, as a kid, we sang Zippity Doo Dah in music class. And we certainly sang it when I went to summer camp, walking down the wilderness trails and things like that. And it's interesting as cultural attitudes change. I'm always fascinated by what is it that we owe our culture, and do we, as we become more evolved as people and become more mindful of what was offensive, what isn't, maybe what was once acceptable is now deemed offensive. But the problem is now there's this weird, it's like censorship is okay, history, everything I used to read about totalitarian civilizations. We got The Handmaid's Tale, but whether it's 1984 or Brave New World, I mean, 1984 is just celebrating a birthday, what just became, what, 70? And all of this totalitarian literature that I would read and how terrible it is, THX 1138, George Lucas's first feature, we're kind of seeing that. It's not just fascism, but the idea that our history is somehow supposed to be scrubbed because we're embarrassed or by it, or we can't deal with our own history. I mean, I don't understand. Human beings have been pretty horrible to each other for the last 100,000 years. There's not a lot of recorded history back that far, but say 4,000 years, and we got a pretty good idea what happened. Human beings were not nice to one another. They've never been not nice to one another. And I think it's really interesting that while you could get Song of the South in other parts of the world, we couldn't get it in the very country that needs to remember the antebellum South. And we need to remember our legacy of enslaving other human beings for hundreds of years. It's almost as if we didn't want to do that. And you read Mark Twain, Huckleberry Finn, Tom Sawyer using the N-word in these books. People want to scrub those words from those books when I think that this is incredibly dangerous, and it's a slippery slope that we go down at our peril. From my perspective, should Disney, look, if Disney wants to censor the Black Crows from Dumbo, or they don't want to ever make Song of the South available, that's their prerogative as a company, because they do, I understand, they have to maintain and understand where we are now. Where is our culture at right now? Even though our culture has been infantilized and people are screaming and yelling at each other because they don't feel good. This makes me feel uncomfortable. Again, I can't wait till the alien invasion happens or the pandemic happens, or, when something really terrible befalls these people and their feelings, when it comes down to a fight or flight, we're either going to get vaporized by alien heat rays, or you're going to fight back. And you're not going to be talking about whether or not somebody on campus has offended you. And I do think we live in times when it is very important that we stand up and rise up and make sure that the free flow of all ideas, that science is not dismissed. We otherwise, I mean, our culture is going crazy, and we should never, like you guys, the Post-Geek Singularity community. Yes, I have moderators, because let's face it, there's a lot of douchebags that'll come in here and just say stupid, dumb, infantile things. But having a community that understands that there's not censorship happening in the chat room with you guys right now. What's happening is that we're making sure that everyone's being respectful to one another. And if you are respectful to one another, and how hard is that really? Everybody here is lovely. You're all lovely. Why can't we expect that from our society at large? We desperately need the free flow of ideas, the unfettered discussions of all of these things. And I do think a company can do what they want, unfortunately. But that doesn't change the fact that these films existed, that this film won an Academy Award, and its lead actor, the man who played Uncle Remus, got an honorary Academy Award, which I didn't know until I just read the Wikipedia entry. These are important things. Should the efforts of all these people be scrubbed from existence because let's face it, we're over, what is that, 70 years later? And those at more than 70 years later, it's like, there's something's problematic going on there. So, let's get rid of it. Let's not face it head on directly and try and talk like rational adults about something and how far we've come, even in this country. Since Song of the South was released, we had the Civil Rights Movement, we had Dr. King, We had Malcolm X. There was a lot going on in this country, and we're constantly having to define ourselves, and we have to know how we think and where we're coming from and what these things mean. And I think putting out a movie like Song of the South, as long as it's contextualized, could begin a conversation or continue a conversation that I think we desperately and necessarily need to have. I think there's no reason to honestly to get rid of these movies or pretend these things did not exist, because in fact they did exist. They were here, and I think we need to continue to talk about these things. At least that's kind of the way I see it. What do you guys think? Do you think I'm not correct? I don't know. Let's see. To follow this up is another letter from someone named Kevin Wilson. Thank you, Kevin, for writing in. Hey, Rob, I have been watching your show since the beginning, and I finally have a topic we can talk about. I just finished watching the Roger Corman film, The Intruder, starring William Shatner. Wow. Shatner and the rest of the cast are fantastic. History teachers should play this film when talking about the civil rights movement. It's important to note that the movie did not make a profit until it was released on DVD. So I wonder how many movies we will miss because they were not successful at the box office when physical media dies and digital media is the only distribution outlet for films. Well, good question. Now, for those of you who haven't seen The Intruder, well, why don't I just read you the Wikipedia entry? That's the great William Shatner. First of all, The Intruder came out in 1962, and it stars William Shatner. By the way, it's great, and it is incredibly surprising. The Intruder is a 1962 American film directed by Roger Corman and starring William Shatner. It is adapted from a 1959 novel by Charles Beaumont. For those of you who don't know, Charles Beaumont, along with Rod Serling, was one of the great writers of the original Twilight Zone. Charles Beaumont was one of the great writers of the mid-century, and we lost him way too soon. It is adapted from a 1959 novel by Charles Beaumont. The story depicts the machinations of a racist named Adam Kramer, portrayed by Shatner, who arrives in a fictitious small southern town of Caxton in order to incite white townspeople to racial violence against black townspeople and court-ordered school integration. The film is also known under its U.S. reissue titles such as I Hate Your Guts and Shame, and The Stranger in the UK release. It's a pretty powerful movie, and I think Shatner delivers a great performance. It's certainly against character. It's, of course, it's the same period of time that he did his two Twilight Zone episodes, Nick of Time and Nightmare at 20,000 Feet. But it's all about what was happening at the time, racial segregation in schools, and Shatner plays a racist, and there's a lot of rough language, and there's in terms of today. But, I mean, it was depicting what was going on at the time. And again, this is what happened in America. I mean, men were lynched. People were horribly killed. We were not very nice in the South to members of the human race, simply because they had black skin. I mean, if only people took up the Clive Barker Books of Blood doctrine, which is all of us are books of blood. Whenever we're opened, we're read. There might have been a lot less racism in the world. But it's also a fantastic film, and it's definitely worth watching. And again, it deals with these rough issues. And I want to thank you, Kevin, for bringing that up. I actually own The Intruder. And, it's something that I remember. It was one of those movies like, oh, I had to watch it because William Shatner was in it. And my God, was it eye-opening. It was not something I would have expected to show up from Captain Kirk. Let's just put it that way. So it was rough. It was definitely something different, something I didn't expect, and I think it worth seeing, even though the subject matter is rough. So I don't know what to tell you all. I don't know what to say, other than the fact that I think these entertainments that were made at a certain point in our history should be seen, whether they're seen in a museum or not. I think it doesn't matter as long as these things are preserved, as long as our cultural history is preserved and these conversations continue to be had. How else are we ever going to learn? How else are we going to expect people to move forward into the future? How else are we going to be able to expect or respect the rights of people that didn't traditionally have rights? We have to know what kind of people we were before we can be the people that we're going to become or that we want to become. And I've honestly always believed that. So, and I always talk about the sovereignty of the individual as well. I mean, one of the great things about living in Western civilization is that individuals are free, usually for the most part, to do and be the people that they want, unconstrained by the government and unconstrained by your fellow citizens. And we've got shows on TV like A Handmaid's Tale Star Wars is about revolutionaries that want to break free of their bondage as exemplified by the Empire. So, these are very important. And while I get it, the problem is here's what I see happening. I think that we are becoming I talked about how we're myopic, how we're navel gazing. We're walking around with our heads in our phones, only getting information that we like. But eventually what's going to happen is we're not going to be able to function in the real world because things that we like, if that's all you're getting, how do you deal with things that you don't like rather than screaming if something makes you feel bad? Well, you know what? What are you going to do if you're in a situation where, I don't know, someone's shooting at you or someone's coming at you in your house or bad things happen? If they don't make you feel good, how are you going to function in the real world when you have to face true adversity? It's a rough call. And I think that we need to toughen ourselves up. We need to toughen ourselves up intellectually, physically, however. And I think it's important. And I don't see that suppressing problematic material, such as movies that were made in 1946, is going to help us be better people if it's put away. How it will help us be better people is if it's available to see and it can be contextualized and we can discuss it. We can have an open conversation about, why are they taking Mark Twain books off shelves in schools? Because of a word, because of a word, admittedly a very ugly word that has an ugly history and ugly connotations. But again, I mean, I'd rather be able to. I can't even say the word on this channel. And I can't. I can't. If I were to say it in any context, people would come after me and say, "Who he said the N-word," and so I'm not going to say it. But isn't that crazy? I mean, here, if we're having a discussion about the actual word, I would rather, because I know what will happen to me, not say it. And I'm sure there are other words that I can't say, but that's pretty much culturally one of the worst. And I'm not saying I should be able to say it, but it should be contextualized and understood. And we should be able to talk about these things because it'll only benefit us in the long run. I mean, it really will. It'll make us better people. The more we are open and honest about who we are and where we came from. I honestly believe that's true. Stubble McShave will say, will Song of the South be public domain in the future? Well, that's an interesting question because no, I think Disney still owns the movie. I don't really understand the copyright law in the sense that if something slips into the public domain, I mean, that movie's theirs. I think the underlying IP might slip into them. And I'm not a copyright lawyer. I don't understand how it all works. But I mean, Song of the South will always be just like, a house. If your family owns a house, unless you live in, say, Nazi Germany, and somebody shows up and says the house that's been in your family for 200 years is no longer yours, I don't think that's how America works in terms of possession. So I think that the movie Song of the South will probably always belong to Disney, but whether those underlying rights to the IP will, so somebody else could theoretically make a Song of the South film. And remember, those books are based on the movie's based on the Uncle Remus stories. So they're not necessarily, you could probably, are those stories in the public domain? I don't know. That dude says, Rob, I've got you live at the shop. Say hello. Well, that dude, I don't know what shop you have or what you're selling. I would like to imagine that your shop and everybody there, everybody that can hear my voice, if you're at that dude's shop, is that what your shop's called? Like that dude's store. I will say this, that dude, if you're shopping at that dude's store right now, you should spend twice as much as you were planning because he's supporting Robservations on the Burnettwork at YouTube on this Friday afternoon. And it's me, Robert Meyer Burnett, coming at you live. And I say, hello, spend more money. How's that? I want to imagine that when you say the shop, wouldn't it be cool if it's a comic shop? Buy more graphic novels. Buy the absolute version of The Watchmen. I don't know. I don't know what you've got, that dude, but thanks for having me on live at the shop. Of course, I could be wrong when you say the shop. It could be a bait shop. After all, perhaps you're all fishermen and women, and you're about to go out. Well, if you're fishermen and women, you probably had already been out. But I don't know. But whatever your store is, I hope you and all of your customers are having a fine Friday afternoon. Was that cool? I don't know who I was talking to. Oh, it is a comic book shop. Oh my God. The shop is called Comic Relief, and we sell comics. Oh my God. Hello, everyone in Comic Relief. This is Robert Meyer Burnett coming at you from Pasadena, California, right now on this Friday afternoon. And I want you to buy as many hardcover graphic novels and hot toys and action figures and whatever else they're selling in your store, Comic Relief, because you know what? You should feel proud that you are supporting America's comic book stores. My friend, John Schnepp, who cannot be here with us anymore because he's passed away, would want you to know that it's awesome that you're here in Comic Relief buying stuff on this Friday afternoon. Buy stuff for your kids. Buy stuff for your sweetheart. Buy a comic book you feel people should read. When I was in high school, I gave my teacher, Carol Penke, an issue of Moon Knight, the Stained Glass Scarlet issue. I think it was Moon Knight 14, as an example of how comic books had started to grow up. If you're looking for it, if they have back issues of Moon Knight, it's the first series by Doug Mensch and Bill Sienkiewicz. It has an all-red cover with a woman with a crossbow and a stained glass. It's great. It's a great Sienkiewicz cover. Check it out. How's that dude? And I want to thank you for supporting the channel. That's pretty cool. But anyway, it's nice to know that I'm here talking to people in a comic book store. Fantastic. Anyway, what are you guys buying? What are people buying? I don't know. But let's see. What about if I have other letters? There's a couple of letters I wanted to read that I've misplaced them. And when Mike Bawden sends me letters and I misplace them, it takes me a while to go find them. But anyway, so it's very weird to me. As you know, I have this irrational fear of somebody coming to my house with my Amazon buy list for the last, 15 years. I don't know how long I've been buying stuff at Amazon, but they have a record of, and all of the questionable horror novels or movies that I'm not supposed to own, that somebody's going to knock on my door and take them all and say that these are subversive materials and you're not allowed to read this stuff or watch this stuff or listen to this stuff. And this is kind of a fear that I have. And is it irrational? I don't know. I guess it comes from a life of growing up in Sunday school and meeting Holocaust survivors every year. So it was tough. So anyway, I think I would like to actually share since he's here and they're funny. I got to read some of Terry. Terry did send in. I mean, he is the moderator, so he's here all the time. But Terry sent me a letter. Terry, even my moderator sends me letters at the Burnettwork.net. And I'm going to read his 3-word movie reviews because I got to say, they're pretty damn witty. So here they are, everyone. You can already read his Phantom Menace 3-word review. These are Terry Flynn, our moderator, and your moderators, his 3-word movie reviews. Hi, Rob. Some 3-word reviews of our beloved movies. Buyer beware. You know what my sense of humor is like. Kind regards, Terry. Well, his first one, The Phantom Menace. Terry's 3-word review is Neeson's Rage Begins. Attack of the Clones. Bring Sick Bag. Oh, I like Attack of the Clones. Revenge of the Sith. Arsehead wins. Star Wars. Princess does coke. Wasn't that not until Jedi? Oh, just kidding. The Empire Strikes Back. Tales from Arkansas. Return of the Jedi. Minus one hand. The Force Awakens. It's a stick. The Last Jedi. No added fish. Alien. Ignore the cat. Captain Marvel. Don't trust cats. Star Trek 09. May induce seizures. Star Trek Into Darkness. Course it's con. And Star Trek Beyond. Hello, anyone there? Well, Terry, I want to thank you for those. Those are all very witty. You're a very funny man. But you grew up with British comedy, so I would expect nothing less of you. Dan V900 says, To Kill a Mockingbird has been banned more often now, where I never expected that living in Minnesota. It's because of the portrayal of racism, and it's almost like, well, that's a big theme in the book. You know, the story of Boo Radley, if you guys haven't read To Kill a Mockingbird, or you haven't seen the movie with Gregory Peck, it's one of the great American stories. And the idea that anybody would ban To Kill a Mockingbird is absurd. It's utterly absurd, as if these things did not happen, as if they were not a part of our own history. There is nothing to be gained by quashing these ideas. Absolutely nothing. All we can do is read these things. I mean, and children especially. Children should not be protected. Yes, of course, there's things you gradually have to teach children. But children live in a world where they have to deal with death. When my grandmother passed away when I was 9 years old, my parents didn't want me to know. They tried to protect me from her sickness. I had no idea that she was as sick as she was, and she actually passed away during the holidays. And the last conversation I had with her on the phone, I didn't know it was going to be the last conversation I had with her on the phone. And I was not allowed to go to her funeral because they thought, maybe I was 8. Maybe I was 8 at the time, and my sister was 6. And like, death is a fact of life, and my parents tried to prevent me from that experience. I don't think that was a good thing. You know, I think that everything should be contextualized with kids, and you explain it to children the way they can hopefully understand it. Otherwise, you're lying to them. My parents sort of took away, and my parents are great people. They were trying to do their best, but they took away the experience of me being able to even say goodbye to my grandmother. I had no real closure because I talked to her on the phone. I saw her before she died over the Thanksgiving break. We went on this epic trip to California, and we went to Lion Country Safari. We went to the San Diego Zoo. I went to Universal Studios for the first time. That's how I saw Airport 77 being filmed. We stayed in the Beverly Hills, or the Beverly Wilshire Hotel. It was a very posh time. We went to Disneyland for the first time, where my grandmother was in a wheelchair, which I didn't understand. I didn't realize her body was so riddled with cancer she couldn't walk. But I didn't know. And when my grandmother was gone, I received no closure. I didn't get to say goodbye, and I didn't understand. I think, you know, protecting children from the realities of life is never a good thing. It's just how you present those things to children. And I see that as we become adults, why should we be protecting other adults from ideas? It's scary. Dave Atkins asks, thoughts on E3 this year, Keanu Reeves? Well, for those of you who don't know, if you haven't seen it already, Keanu Reeves came out in support of the upcoming video game, Cyberpunk, 2077? The game looks very cool. It's an open world, open source. It's a sandbox game that's set in Dark City in the future. And of course, Keanu Reeves plays a character, and he came out to the delight of the audience. It's actually kind of fun to watch. And I think he was pretty tickled by the audience response to him, because they were very much responding to his presence, and everybody thought it was really cool. And the fact that he's now, Keanu Reeves is back on top. I think, you know, it's funny. Look at a guy like Keanu Reeves. He's, to me, a perfect example of somebody who's stuck it out in the business. Like, first time I saw Keanu Reeves was in Tim Hunter's movie River's Edge, which is an astonishing film about a teenage boy who kills his girlfriend and leaves her body by the side of a river. And then all of her friends, and the same friends, the guy that killed her, have to deal with the aftermath. Dennis Hopper's in it. It's an incredibly powerful movie that I can't even imagine somebody making today. Somebody said, you can't make that movie today. But that was the first time I saw Keanu Reeves in a film, and watching his trajectory from the 80s. And then, of course, he was Bill and Ted in Bill and Ted. Well, he was not both Bill and Ted, but he was in Bill and Ted. And then, he was in movies like Coppola's Dracula, where he was pilloried by his performance. And when he did Shakespeare, it didn't exactly come off well. But then, in the late 90s, he's in Speed. And of course, he's had this career where he's had his ups and downs, and he's been the butt of jokes. And then people have loved him when The Matrix rolled around in 99. People loved Keanu Reeves in The Matrix, and that was great. So he's sort of back on top. And then he's gone up and down. And his movie, what is it? Replicas, that didn't do so well. But John Wick's back, and now he's a Keanu-sance. Is that kind of what's happening? The Reeves-sance, the whatever you want to call it. Everyone loves Keanu Reeves. Always Be My Maybe. His cameo in that was hilarious, which I found out he improv some of that today. So, Dave, I think E3 is something that I've always loved. I've always watched all the coverage that comes out of E3. But, video games, as much as I like video games, I love playing video games. I'm not a gamer per se. I mean, I get on to video game jags where I play them, but I owned it in television, and then I didn't own a video game system for a very long time. And I bought a Nintendo N64 because I wanted to play Shadows of the Empire. And so I bought an N64, which I really liked. And then I got into GameCube, and then I was into PlayStation. So I had a PlayStation 2, and then I had a PlayStation 3 because it had a Blu-ray player in it. And so, I'm a huge fan of video games. I just don't have a lot of time to play them because I get obsessed. They're a great narcotic for me. So I do love playing video games, but I don't play many. But I love the coverage coming out from E3, and I love video game technology and artistry. I mean, it truly is. I'm always blown away by the kind of artistry that's now available in the video game industry. It's cutting edge. And what's really interesting is video games. And I don't know if there's ever going to be a great video game movie, because the whole point of a video game character is to play them. I don't know if they necessarily translate very well. And everyone's like, when is there going to be the great video game movie? Well, maybe there doesn't need to be one. I mean, video games have become an art form unto themselves, and they're so sophisticated and so interesting now that why not video games? And the profitability factor in video games. I mean, a great video game can cost as much as a $200 million movie now to produce, and just as long, if not longer. So I love what's coming out of E3. I love watching all the trailers and all the games and seeing what I want to play, and it's very exciting. David Atkins also says, waiting for Stephen King's The Long Walk adaptation. Okay, for those of you who don't know, and people might be saying, wait, Stephen King, Long Walk, what? So, and this is interesting. In the it would be the early 80s, the first time I'd ever heard of Richard Bachman. He was a cult novelist in my junior high school at South Mercer Junior High. And a buddy of mine had handed me this book, The Long Walk. And we had like 3 copies of the paperback, the Signet, I think it was Signet, a Signet paperback of The Long Walk. And I was a huge Stephen King fan. No one knew that Stephen King was publishing books under a pseudonym, Richard Bachman. When The Long Walk came out, The Long Walk was the second, I think it was the second of Stephen King's pseudonym. The second Richard Bachman book, the first Richard Bachman book was called Rage. That Stephen King is, here, brief history. So Stephen King, under the name Richard Bachman, had published Rage, The Long Walk, Roadwork, and The Running Man. Now, I had read The Long Walk in, I want to say, 8th grade, and I love the book. And The Running Man is The Long Walk. The plot of the Long Walk, for those of you who don't know, the story is it takes place in a dystopian future America. And I think it's once a year they have this thing called The Long Walk. And 100 boys, I guess they're high school age boys or younger, get to participate in The Long Walk. And there's 100 people. There's like 2 kids from every state. And all The Long Walk is you start walking. These 100 boys start walking. And if you if you drop underneath 3 miles an hour, if you're walking less than 3 miles an hour, you get a ticket. And if you get 3 tickets in an hour, you get shot in the head. The third ticket is you get shot. And the long walk is over when there's only one kid remaining. So 99 of the people that participate in the long walk get shot through the head. And the winner gets whatever they want. If you want to be a trillionaire, you're a trillionaire. You basically get what you want. And so the book, in addition to showing the long walk, it goes in and out of these boys' lives, and it sort of talks about where they're at and their philosophy and their child problems and like the general. There's a character in the book, I'll never forget this. There's a character in the book named Stebbins, who's almost like the villain, but Stebbins. I always love the name Stebbins because he sounds like a dick. And Garrity, it's funny, God, I haven't read this book in years. Garrity is the main character in the book. Garrity and Stebbins is kind of his foil. And I don't want to ruin it for you, but it was when I read it in junior high school, it had a huge impact on me. And the idea that the director of the autopsy of Jane Doe is going to finally adapt this book. I know Frank Darabont wanted to do it for the longest time. Maybe he's a producer. I thought he bought the rights, but the book would be great. It'd be really cheap to film. You just have to shoot it like just go to some state. You're just walking. That's it. I mean, and you're followed. There's people that line up by the side of the road to watch people come in and walking through little towns, and people are applauded and everything. And it's pretty great, but it's pretty nihilistic too. Nihilism is high because all of these kids are going to die. Everybody in the movie is going to get shot through the head. Now it's funny because Richard Bachman, when he released Thinner, I think it was Thinner, when Thinner came out in hardcover, it came out. Stephen King, I don't remember the exact story, but the whistle was going to get blown on Richard Bachman. And it was a bummer because I became a Richard Bachman fan because I read The Long Walk, and Roadwork came out. And then when The Running Man came out, The Running Man is way different than the movie. The movie's this goofy sort of parody, but The Running Man was a very serious novel. And there's a science fiction movie I got to look this up. There's a science fiction movie called The 10th Victim that stars Marcello Mastroianni and Ursula Andress. And the plot of The 10th Victim is there's this game in the future called The Big Hunt, and it's televised. It's a big deal where in The Big Hunt, you have to be a hunter and a victim. You have to go on 10 hunts and be a victim 10 times, and you can kill your hunter. But, you try and kill the other person. If you're in The Big Hunt, you try and kill another human being. And The 10th Victim is a pretty cool movie. It's not a great movie, but as far as 60s science fiction goes, it's great. And it's based on, I want to say, a Robert Sheckley story called The 10th or The 7th Victim. There's a movie called The 7th Victim. It's not the same thing. Okay, let me go to the once again. By the way, never go to Wikipedia for all of your information. Please go to other sources. But it's an Italian movie. Oh, it's directed by Elio Petri. Elio Petri is a great director, and he directed a movie called Investigation of a Citizen Beyond Suspicion, which is a great movie. But beyond that, if you get the Criterion Blu-ray of Investigation into a Citizen Beyond Suspicion, there's a great documentary about Elio Petri's career. And it was funny because when I got Investigation of a Citizen Beyond Suspicion, I'd never seen that film. So when I got the Blu-ray, I'd heard about it. I'd never made the connection until I watched this great documentary on him, because he was a very political filmmaker and a dissident and had a really interesting life. You got to get Investigation into a Citizen Above Suspicion. Get that disc, if only for nothing else than the documentary about Elio Petri. But so he directed The 10th Victim. The 10th Victim is 1965 Italian international co-production science fiction film directed by Elio Petri, starring Marcello Mastroianni and Ursula Andress, and featuring Elsa Martinelli in a supporting role. The picture is based on Robert Sheckley's 1953 short story, Seventh Victim. It depicts a government-endorsed televised big hunt featuring contestants from the world around the world acting as humans, hunters, and victims. When Marcello Poletti and Caroline Meredith, the game's two top assassins, are pitted against each other, they find that love is the most dangerous game of all. I recommend it. It is on Blu-ray. I own the Blu-ray, and it has an incredible 60s pop art soundtrack that you got to get. I have the soundtrack too. You can get the soundtrack. It's really, really good. So anyway, The Running Man, which is also Richard Bachman's last book, was very similar to that. In The Running Man, it was very, very serious, and it was not like Richard Dawson. It was about an everyman who needs money for his family, and he joins sort of this big hunt, and he has to elude people. And what's really cool about the end of The Running Man, spoiler alert, is he ends up flying a jetliner into the building where this game is based out of, taking everybody down and presumably ending the hunt that's in The Running Man. But so when Thinner came out, Stephen King, it was revealed that Stephen King was Richard Bachman. And what was really funny is that my crazy friend Shade Roop, who's now been an extra, he's written books, and I grew up with him. We went and saw movies together, and he's my one movie fanatic friend. He came to me once and he said, he actually wrote, he corresponded with Stephen King in the 80s. He comes to me one day and he goes, I think that Stephen King is Richard Bachman. And I was like, what? And he took The Long Walk, and on the front of the book of The Long Walk, Garrity, I guess it's Garrity, has a number, and the number's 47. And in the book somewhere, this is what Shay told me, if I'm remembering it right. It was in the early 80s. Who knows what happened to my middle-aged addled brain. But Shade said, Stephen King lives at like 47th East Broadway. And in the book, The Running Man, or the Long Walk, that Garrity lived on East Broadway, and his number was 47. I'm like, no way. Lo and behold, Shade was proved to be right. I thought he was amazing because of it. So anyway, am I waiting for this? I've wanted to see this book adapted. It's one of those movies when I was a kid, when I was in elementary or junior high and high school, dreaming of making movies. I'm like, I want to make The Long Walk. And now it's being made by the director of The Autopsy of Jane Doe. If you guys haven't seen the horror movie, The Autopsy of Jane, if you haven't seen The Autopsy of Jane Doe, turn out the lights, get it, watch it. It is a hoot. It's one of my favorite horror films I've seen in the last 5 years. It's a hoot. I don't want to oversell it, but it's a hoot. Basically, all takes place in one room. It's really good. Check it out. And if you want to see how The Long Walk might turn out, watch The Autopsy of Jane Doe, because I think it's going to be good with him directing. Team Nerd says, no Dark Phoenix yet. I enjoyed it. Hope you can too. I haven't gone to it. I've been sort of busy this week. I can't believe I haven't gone to an X-Men movie. I didn't believe we'd ever live in a world where that were the case. But isn't there a Deep Space Nine episode with Hunting Game? Yes, and Voyager as well. But I can't remember. It was like Move Along Home or something. No, I don't. But yes, there are the Tosk. Isn't it Tosk the Hunter? I don't remember which Deep Space Nine episode it is, but yes, there is. Or maybe Tosk is the Predator. I don't see. Sometimes I don't remember everything about Star Trek. I have to keep so much straight in my head. But yeah, there is an episode, a Deep Space Nine episode with them hunting game. I just don't know. Maybe someone does in the live chat that I am not seeing. Let's see. There's so much. Wow, you guys, there's so much going on. Anyway, in the live chat, I never even dip into the live chats anymore. I used to because I wanted just to see if Vesna was here, and I wonder if Willow Yang knows that we read her letter. But we shall see. I don't know. And as we do have a spot on the Burnettwork.net website where we are putting Willow's letters up, so you can go read them again. And it's called Willow Talk. So there you go. What else? I can go back and look at. I'm sorry, my mind is drifting because there's a person that's been calling me on the phone during this chat like 4 times, and I have to talk to them. And they keep calling me, not knowing that I'm live talking to you, lovely people. But anyway, I think it's been an hour. I think I'm going to bring this chat to a close early. Well, I guess not early, but keep this one at an hour because I've sort of said my piece today. And I have a lot of personal issues, not hygiene issues or anything like that, not bad issues, not health issues, but personal issues I need to deal with today because it's Friday and there's a lot going on. But anyway, I want to thank you all for being here and being members of the Post-Geek Singularity community. I got to go talk to the lovely ladies from France who are here too. I want to thank everyone. I want to thank my moderators, Terry, Greg, Mike, and Detective Jim, for being here and keeping you people on the straight and narrow. And I want to remind you all to send me letters to burnettwork.net and participate. Go to getluckytiger.com and you can use PGS, Post Geek Singularity, and get 20% off your order. And go to the clubluckytiger.com website. It's a different website, and sign up for their summer sweepstakes. I think their summer sweepstakes is going to be over tomorrow, maybe. I think it's still going on today, but you can win free stuff. And why not? Why not? Who doesn't want to win free stuff? But anyway, I want to thank all of you for being here. I will be back tomorrow at noon. I look forward to seeing you all here. I will have more letters and more things to say. But remember, every person you meet has a story to tell you have not heard yet. And all you have to do is listen. I want to thank everyone who supports the channel via super chats, and everybody who's starting to join. You can become a member of the Post Geek Singularity for $1 a year. And anybody who joins the website is going to get a first look at Neil's Space Rob video game. In addition to other things, I'm going to be posting. I was going to do this all on Patreon, but I'm trying to if you're on my Patreon and you support me on Patreon, please move over to the website if you can. I've appreciated everyone's support on Patreon, but I'm trying to deplatform myself off Patreon. So yes, I am. But anyway, I want to thank you for all of your support, and I'm going to have more things. I'm actually going to drop, assuming the tape is good. This could be kind of interesting for everybody. So I made a short film with Peter Billingsley. And Peter Billingsley is the kid from A Christmas Story, Don't Shoot Your Eye Out kid. He was also an executive producer of Iron Man. He directed a movie himself called Couples Retreat. But he and I made this little goofy short based on a Charles DeLint story called The Sacred Fire. It's one of my first directing efforts. We co-directed the film. I actually shot it. We shot it in 16 millimeter, and it's based on one of his short stories. We just did it as an exercise. We went out for a day and shot it, and we'd been working together editing the movie Arcade, the Full Moon movie Arcade, and we made this, and no one's seen it. It was released on home video 20 years ago, and since then no one has ever seen it. It's not on YouTube. I've never put it up, and I'm going to put it up. I'm going to make it available exclusively to members of the Post Geek Singularity on the Burnettwork first. I'll have a secret YouTube link that you'll be able to see it, and then I'll release it to the public. But you're going to see it first. And if you're a member, $1 gets you a glimpse at The Sacred Fire, based on the Charles DeLint story, starring Peter Billingsley and co-directed by us. So I think that'll be pretty cool. And there's going to be more of those things coming down the line for just $1, or you can support the channel more if you like. But $1 is it. But anyway, that brings this chat to a close. Oh, one more thing. I was going to do my live comic book auction tomorrow, which I'm not going to do. I'm not going to do because it's problematic. I've got to do an experiment. So I think I'm going to auction off a hot toy tomorrow. And I don't know what that hot toy is, but I'm going to auction it off just because I want to see how a live auction would work. Because what Mike was pointing out to me, and rightfully so, is that when you are doing something live, not everybody jumps into the live stream from the very beginning. So people might not even be here. So, I don't know. I'm just going to try it and see how it works, just to see what it would be like to run a live auction. So I'm going to auction off a hot toy figure tomorrow. Just to see what happens, and because it could be cool. It'd be kind of fun, and who knows, maybe somebody could pick up a hot toy for like $10. That could be embarrassing, but it could be fun too. So we shall see. Hot toy will be auctioned off tomorrow, just to see how it works in the live stream. So if you ever wanted to own a hot toy, now is your chance. I'm not going to tell you what it is though. Could be a Star Wars hot toy, could be a superhero hot toy, could be a hot toy from another movie. You just never know what it's going to be, but it'll be cool, and it'll be a hot toy, so you know what I'm talking about. Well, everybody, I want to say thank you for being here. I'll be back at noon tomorrow, and I want to remind everyone, of course, to have a better day. Thanks a lot.